Well, travel to Alaska just got easier, but maybe not in a way that's going to make cruise fans excited. There are more cruise cancellations and honestly just a huge old pile of cruise news. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome back to the Cruise News Show. I'm your host Tony here with the latest cruise news updates. Look, we got a lot of cruise news to process through today. I'm gonna try to go through it as quickly and succinctly as possible, but you might want to take notes. No, I'm just kidding. We'll talk about how traveling to Alaska is getting easier. We're going to close the show out with that, so I would just encourage you to stay until the end. But first, let's talk about the Port of Miami. Probably 2 weeks ago, I talked about shore power and how the Port of Miami has had a desire for probably the last 10 years to start doing things with shore power. And the concept of shore power is very simple. Cruise ship comes to port at the Port of Miami. Instead of running their engines the whole time they are ported there while they're loading and unloading passengers, they will be able to plug into the power grid there in Miami. Therefore, they can cut the engines off. It's a cleaner form of power there in Miami. But to this point, they haven't been able to do it. Cruise ships have been developed and built with the ability to connect to shore power, but Miami, the largest cruise port in the world, to this point has not had shore power. That is about to change. The mayor of Miami yesterday signed a joint agreement with 6 cruise lines: Carnival Cruise Line, MSC Cruise Line, Norwegian Cruise Line, Royal Caribbean Cruise Line, Disney Cruise Line, and Virgin Voyages, along with Florida Power and Light, to bring shore power to the Port of Miami. This signed agreement really just the first step in the process, a process that will take multiple years until shore power is fully realized there in the Port of Miami. But what that means for cruising, at least from an environmental profile, it will be something that they can point at to say, look, we are doing things to improve our relationship with the environment, and this should garner them some goodwill. It's probably going to cost them more money in the long run, cost more money to run off of shore power than off of just fuel for their engines there in port. But it is a move that should reduce the overall pollution, the overall pollutants there at the Port of Miami. So big ups, congratulations. It will be interesting to track along with that project. Now, there's some exciting news coming out from Disney about Marvel and Star Wars, but I'm gonna delay that and sandwich in some cancellation news. How about that? First up, Viking Ocean Cruise Line. They are joining Norwegian Cruise Line, canceling their cruises through May the 31st. So like many other cruise lines still out there, they were scheduled to go in May. Now they are canceling those cruises. I don't think that's a big surprise. If you are affected by the Viking cancellation, you can opt for a full refund or a future cruise credit worth 125% of what you paid. Carnival Cruise Line Corporation brand P&O Cruises Australia also announcing cancellations today. They were scheduled to cruise in May of 2021 in Australia, but they're going to push out their restart of cruising into June. I've been tracking another interesting story. P&O, if you remember, they tried to send a cruise ship to New Zealand, but they ran into trouble with visa issues. Eventually, P&O said, all right, New Zealand, we're just not going to mess with you. P&O is now trying to work with Australia to get cruises going during the summer there. So while P&O is pushing out until June, there could be cruises in Australia on P&O, but the trend continues to be wait and see as COVID numbers go down, as vaccine numbers go up, how governments are going to react to that new climate. And so P&O pushing it out to see what it's going to look like in June. We will continue to track what's going on with cruising in Australia. Somebody asked me yesterday, why don't I talk much about the ports on the west coast of the United States, cruising there? This is my personal feeling, and it's nothing against the west coast. We do talk about cruising out of Florida a lot. It is the epicenter, not just because I live here, it has nothing to do with that, but you have the major cruise ports, the biggest cruise ports. The cruise lines themselves have said that the restart of cruising will happen out of Miami, will happen out of Port Canaveral. And so I do tend to focus on those cities when I think about the restart of U.S. cruises, because as Miami goes, as Canaveral goes, so will the rest of the country. And so until we see movement in Miami, until we see movement there, I doubt we will see much activity on the West Coast. Of course, Seattle in the news lately because of the cruise ban in Canada. But to me, Seattle lives in that Alaska conversation where ports like Long Beach, San Diego, San Francisco, cruising down to the Mexican Riviera. I believe that those ports will fall in line after cruising restarts from Florida to, say, the Caribbean. Not ignoring California or Texas or Maryland or New York, not ignoring any of those other cruise ports. If major news develops there, I will cover it. But I do believe if you want to see how cruising is going to go in the short term, keep your eyes on Miami. And another thing I believe is that if you want to stay up to date with what's going on in cruising, I'm a pretty good option for you. I don't have all the cruise news, but I try to curate the cruise news. I try to find the things that I feel like would be interesting for you and put it through my lens and put it out there for you. So if you want to stay up to date with at least my take on the cruise news, please consider subscribing to this YouTube channel with the notification bell on. Become a part of this virtual cruising community, and then that way you don't miss out on any of the episodes. Thanks in advance. In new cruise ship news, P&O's Iona now has a sister cruise ship. I mean, she's had a sister cruise ship, but they hadn't named her. So she was just like that poor baby at the hospital that didn't have a name yet. Does that happen to you? Probably not. Arvia. How about that? Arvia. The new P&O Arvia. It means from the seashore. And there's going to be a lady, Sally. She's going to work on that ship. I'm sorry, that's Arvia. How about that? Sister ship to the Iona. The Iona hasn't sailed yet. 5,200 passenger, a nice, beautiful, big vessel. LNG powered, using new technology. This is going to be nice once cruising resumes. And now a cool new name that we'll get to say P&O Arvia. Maybe it'll be a pirate ship. Arvia. It's too many dad jokes for a Thursday. All right, the next story, here it comes. Now let me hit you with some news that excites me, and I do think it's good news for cruising in general. As you see more themed cruises being scheduled for 2022, 2023, it does speak to a confidence that cruising will happen then. And then beyond that, beyond the specialized theme cruise, if you look at companies like Disney that have specialized theme cruises putting out a calendar, it makes you feel better. And then if you're a little bit of a nerd like I am, these theme cruises are especially exciting. Disney has announced the dates for their Marvel Day at Sea and their Star Wars Day at Sea. When you go on a Disney cruise, it's themed, around Disney properties, princesses, many of those things. But every once in a while, they'll highlight Marvel properties, they'll highlight Star Wars properties. Disney owns both of those. And so you can go on a cruise ship and see Darth Vader or Captain America. They have released their schedule for that. These cruises will run from January through March of 2022. And if you can't decide whether you like Marvel or Star Wars better, that's okay. They're both on the same cruise. It's the day at sea. So there'll be a day committed to Marvel. There'll be a day committed to Star Wars. And yeah, you can go see your favorite characters on a Disney cruise ship while having that Disney cruise experience. I'm excited that Disney's announced those dates. To me, it's indicative that they're thinking well beyond just the restart. They're thinking about the nuts and bolts, the things that they do to make cruising special, and certainly scheduling these days a good indication for things to come. At least that's the way I see it. The force is strong with that piece of news. Am I right? And finally, let's close out by talking about Alaska. It is easier to travel to Alaska. The emergency order that required a COVID test, even for domestic travel into Alaska. If you went to the airport there, you had to take a test when you entered Alaska. That requirement is gone. There is no requirement to travel to Alaska from other parts of the United States. There is no test requirement going into Alaska. So easier to travel to Alaska. You don't have to get tested. You can just fly to Alaska. It doesn't help our cruising problem. There still are other things in play when it comes to the Alaska cruise season for 2021. All the major cruise lines still commit to the idea that they're trying to get an exemption for the 2021 season. The head of the Federal Maritime Commission's come out in support of some sort of waiver for the Passenger Vessel Services Act. And so it is still in play. Cruise companies are making accommodations to guests, lengthening the time required for final payment. Royal Caribbean, for example, has just moved their requirement for final payment date from 90 days out to 45 days out on Alaska and New England cruises that are affected by the Canadian cruise ban. Good news, you can travel to Alaska easier. We still don't have any resolution on Alaska cruises. Maybe this is the first shoe to drop, and maybe we'll be able to report good news of an exemption to the Passenger Vessel Services Act. we continue to wait and see. That's the news today. The question for the comment is this: did you have any cruises canceled with those cancellations? Are you tempted to fly to Alaska now that it just got easier, or is your trip to Alaska based around cruising? Anything else you want to talk about around the news? What do you think about shore power? Leave a comment below. Thank you so much for checking out the show today. I am reminded as we get closer to travel, there are some common travel scams you got to be on the lookout for. I did a video about it. Check that out. Thank you again so much. Hit the like button. This is Tony for Lido Loca, and until the next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.